Hi, I'm Bybreen Samuels and welcome back to another episode of Soul Stirring Astrology, where I give you my textured take on the world of astrology. Today, April the 28th, we have Mercury retrograde in Taurus. This is now the fifth planet that is moving retrograde together with the North Node. So it's a great time for introspection, and Mercury will be retrograde until May the 21st. So for the next 3 or so weeks, you've got a chance to start exploring your inner terrain. What I'm going to do on this video is I'm going to be taking you through the houses. So it's Mercury retrograde through the 12 houses. Before I do that though, I just want to give you more of a context around the actual symbol of Mercury. So Mercury is made up of 3 distinctive parts. There is the crescent of soul, there is the circle of spirit, and then there is the cross of matter. So these 3 elements are, once they're integrated, give you a greater experience of your whole world. So it's about trying to acquire a 360-degree perspective of your world. And so when you're going through the crescent of your soul, what you're doing is you're beginning to bring together your ideas, your ideals, your thoughts and your perceptions. And then once you bring them into the first layer of this funnel, you then want to push them down into the circle of your spirit. And then your spirit wants to manifest what's germinating in your mind. And that's where it moves from the circle of spirit through to the cross of matter. And the cross of matter represents the physical manifestation of your thoughts, your perceptions, your ideas and your thinking. So that's what it represents when you're looking at the planet Mercury in its direct motion. Now that the Mercury is going retrograde, that means that the symbol is inverted. And so the cross of matter now is on the top, then you've got this circle of spirit, and then you've got this crescent of your soul. Now where you've got the cross of matter, which has been highlighted here, during this 3-week period, what you're seeking to do is to manifest in a physical form your ideas, your thinking, your perceptions, and so therefore you're going to be exploring your inner terrain, but also having a sense of what you would like your outside world to look like. Also, the fact that the planet is retrograde means that Mercury is between the Earth and the Sun, which then means that the energies and the quality of the energies of Mercury is going to be felt far stronger, because there isn't anything between Mercury and Earth where we reside. And so it's a very potent time for this inner examination around your thoughts, your feelings and your perceptions. And it's a time for you to anchor them, because Mercury is retrograding in Taurus, which is one of the Earth signs. So that gives you some context in terms of what's happening over this retrograde period together with the other 4 planets and the North Node. But I'm just concentrating on Mercury retrograde. Now 2 videos ago I touched on Mercury, Pluto and Mars going retrograde, and during that video I gave you an indication of the different phases of a retrograde cycle. So just to recap on that, the first phase of a retrograde cycle means that you're trying to live into the future. So you're running into the future before it's actually being lived. But you're just trying to hold this vision of what your future life looks like. In the second phase, you're projecting again into the future, but you're trying to live it on the basis of some kind of ideal that you're holding on to, or a perception of what you think this ideal future life will look like. Now in the third phase, here you're projecting again into the future, but you're basing your future life based on past experiences of how you've lived your life before. Now, given that Mercury is in Taurus, Taurus then corresponds very naturally with the third phase. But moving beyond that, I'm now going to take you through the 12 houses. So Mercury will be retrograde, and it's going to show up somewhere in your chart. So the first house where Mercury will retrograde, here you're going to be reflecting on a sense of your self-progress. Now your first house is, it's near the ascendant, and so you've got the ascendant, which is the window to your world. It's the way you want the world to see you and how you see the world. And during this phase 1, sorry, not phase 1, during the first house, what you're thinking of here is how can you be progressing your life? in all areas of your life. And so that's going to be your preoccupation during the first house. Now, if Mercury is retrograding in your second house, here you're thinking of your values, your money, your possession, the tangible things in your life. And you might be feeling very good about the things that you've manifested, or it could be during this retrograde season, what you're thinking of is, do you need to shift some of your values around how you create the physical things in your life, or the physical things you've already created in your life? Is there another way for you to rethink how that could take place as you move out of this retrograde cycle? When Mercury is retrograding in the third house, here you're caught up in terms of how you think people understand you. So there could be a lot of reflection on your style of communication. Are you communicating in a way where you're easily understood, or are you communicating in a way where you feel frustrated and you think that people are misinterpreting or misunderstanding who it is that you are? As the retrograde moves into the fourth house, here would be the house of Cancer and the moon, so it's about your past associations. And so you could be thinking a lot about your past, nurturing, childhood, family, ancestry, your environment, your younger environment, how you were nurtured, how you were mothered, could be really the focus of your attention over the next 3 weeks. But you need to be mindful here, because what it can also show you is whether you are somebody who tends to reside and think a lot about the past. And if you are that sort of person, then what you're doing is you're blocking your unique ability to express your personality and who you are today in your current life. And so the retrograde might actually show you where you are blocking your uniqueness. As Mercury retrograde moves into the fifth house, here we're dealing with the house of creative self-expression. And so it's the house that's ordinarily ruled by Leo. And so it's about, how do you take center stage in your life? And so you might be given some thought about how you could increase that. Or what you might find is that you recognize you're somebody who lives on the periphery of your own life. And so there's this tension here. You're trying to mediate between moving from the peripheral perspective to the center of your life. And if you are living from the center of your life, then you are owning the sense that you are the protagonist in your life. Now you might find actually that you tend to discuss these creative endeavors with younger people, and the reason why it's younger people is because it's the fifth house and that's associated with children and younger people. And you might find it's really easy for you to express yourself and encourage them to be far more creative. But with the retrograde, it's turning that energy inwards, and for you to identify how can you live far more expansively in a creative way. Mercury moving into the sixth house as a retrograde, it's another house that it rules, just as it rules the third house of Gemini. Here, though, you're going to feel a sense of the inner critic coming to the forefront. Because Mercury in Virgo is very analytical, it's very discerning, but it's about how you always want to be this perfectionist. And if you're not meeting your sense and your targets and your ideals, and then you criticize yourself. By doing so, what you're going to find is actually you're living your life in a very narrow framework. And the retrograde period could be showing you how you might need to start living your life from what it could be, instead of living your life through what you think it should be with this very narrow parameter. Also, you might find you're coming into conflict with your work colleagues, because you're holding them to this very high ideal that they can't live up to, but nor can you. So it's about how you release that inner pressure. Mercury retrograde in the seventh house is going to show you where you are indecisive, because ordinarily you could be somebody whereby you're always deferring to other people's ideas and their decisions, and you might be a really good decision maker for other people but a terrible decision maker for yourself. When Mercury is here, Mercury is inviting you to think about how can you be far more action orientated and far more decisive in a way that you're still able to have your relationships, but what you think matters and the actions you take are equally important to you. When Mercury retrograde moves into the eighth house, which is ruled by Pluto, here this is about deep regeneration of your thoughts and how you need to be exploring the very foundation of your existence. And by doing so, you're able to plunge the depths of your life and coming up with purifying and cleansing your thoughts so that you're living in a far more freer and in a way whereby your thinking can grow to be far more expansive, but also far more profound. Where you have Mercury retrograding in the 9th house, this is the house of Jupiter, so you are the teacher, the wise one. But here, what you're examining and what you're thinking about are the philosophies and laws and principles in which you may be basing your life on. But also you might be able to see where you are trivializing philosophical ideals or where you're philosophizing over trivia. Now, if you're trivializing philosophical ideals and concepts, you then potentially are missing the golden nuggets in those philosophies, because therein may lie the answers to the key questions that you privately ask yourself. And so Mercury here shows you that yes, you can be this great leader and teacher of others because you're disseminating information to others, and it's about reversing that process and bringing that into yourself for you to really understand what are the fundamental principles in which you live your life, and this retrograde cycle will show you how you can do that. Mercury into the 10th house, retrograding here, you're looking out into the world and you're sort of congratulating yourself because it's your sense of what you've established. Why? Because it's the house of Saturn, and Saturn is about being full of pride around what you've created and established, and you want that sense of solid recognition. But actually, as you're going through this Mercury cycle, it's also a time for you to think about, well, whose expectations did you build this foundation on, build your reputation on? If it was somebody else's expectation, or it could be a parental expectation because we're dealing with the 10th house and it might be associated with the father figure in your life, you might actually have built your life, your public standing, based on other people's expectations. Now that Mercury is retrograding in the 10th house, it's time for you to identify, well, what are your own expectations of your public face? And as you move through this retrograde cycle and move out into the next arc of your life, what are the expectations that you're going to now build the next phase of your life on? Mercury retrograde in the 11th house is here that you're seeking mental freedom from the things that are mundane in your life. So here you're wanting to explore innovation and ideals that are really expansive, and they could actually impact upon the collective. Now you might ordinarily be very good at this, articulating, these global ideals, but actually now that it's retrograde, it's time for you to think of how can you be inventive in your thinking and apply that invention to your personal life. And then finally, as Mercury moves retrograde into the 12th house, here you're trying to transcend your everyday experiences, and you're trying to create a connection with spiritual divinity. So it's a time whereby you might be exploring the type of spiritual quest that you're going to undertake. Because as you move out of the retrograde cycle, you may find that it's time for you to be leaving home psychologically. It could be like the mythological story of Parsifal that needs to break away, enter this new terrain to explore and to learn further lessons. So that's it, Mercury through all of the 12 houses. And the quote I want to leave you with this week is from Marcus Aurelius. And what he said is this, that the key to happiness is really simple. All you need to do is look within, and it's tied up with the way that you think. So the retrograde cycle, particularly with Mercury, is about how you can liberate and ventilate your thinking so that you're able to transform your thinking and then move out into the world of matter. And then I have a question for the day. And the question today is this. Which house does Mercury retrograde in Taurus fall in your birth chart? And I'd love to know, so put your answers in the comment box below. You can like, you can share, you can subscribe to my channel. Feel free to share this with anyone that you think would benefit or who'd be interested, and I will see you again on the next episode.